Good evening. I'm David Watts Jr. and welcome to this month's Town Administrators Report. With me is our Town Administrator, Steve Maio. Steve, how are you doing?
Good. How are you, David?
Good. We're into fall.
Absolutely. We transitioned from summer to fall like one night, last Friday night. Zoom.
And we're taping this the evening after the Red Sox have backed into the AL East.
Doesn't matter. They still won over 90 games.
That's-
It's a win is a win. Getting
That's
into
the
the-
important
yep.
thing. And also with us this month is our chief, Richard Smith. Welcome.
Thank you, David. Thanks. It's a pleasure to be here.
You've been chief in Wakefield how many years now?
13 years. 13 years. Yeah. It's gone by in a flash. So, but it's been a good 13 years, and I think Steve will agree with me.
Yeah.
We've made a lot of changes. We have a pretty dynamic group of officers that work there. They know what they're doing. It's great. It's a lot of fun to go to work and share, our business every day that we do. They're driven, and they're good people. So it's a pleasure to be here. It's been a good 13 years so far.
And I think when you go where we were 13 years ago as a police force and where we are today, it's night and day. And that's really because of what the chief has brought in and instilled in his staff. And
Yeah.
and I think to a certain extent the community embracing it and working together with the police
It's been a
department. And that's
180-degree
kind of
turnaround.
what maybe we're going to talk about tonight a
Yeah,
little bit.
it's been a 180-degree turnaround, but we've also seen vast improvements in other areas because of initiatives that the police force has taken with respect to especially some of the residences and clubhouses for folks with mental illness and other problems that have been in town for a long, long time. And just that atmosphere has changed very, very greatly to a more positive.
Well, Dave, I come from a generation of police officers, and I've been on the job 42 years, and I come from a different generation. But one of the things that we embrace is a partnership with the community. Now, you go back to 1829, I wasn't there, but Sir Robert Peel said the community...
1831, I think you came in, right? Yeah.
That's when I came on board, a little late. But Sir Robert Peel came out, and he came out with the tenets of basic policing, and he said the police of the community and the community of the police. And we couldn't do our job and do it the way we do it if we didn't have the support of the townspeople, but most importantly, the leadership in the town. Steve Maio has been a great asset to us. He's supported us, he's guided us, we have direction, and I know that if there are issues to be handled, this door's open, we can go over and have that communication. A lot of communities, big and small, don't have that luxury. The Board of Selectmen changed, but over time, somehow we develop a relationship with them, and that is key. And then you take that into the community and into the business owners, the people that take the commuter rail every day. They know that they see an officer walking the platform. They know that we're out there, and we're out there because we want to be. So it's a pretty good dynamic we have that everyone has brought together.
And, full disclosure, all three of us on this program tonight are members of the emergency management group here in town. So we get the unique experience of seeing not just the police department in action, but all of the major departments in town and how everyone pulls together. And it isn't just the police that can do it, but it's the fire department, it's the health department, it's the DPW, it's the IT department, and without everyone bringing their own little contributions to it,
Right.
nothing works.
Right.
And we're very lucky that in this town, at least, it seems to work really well, and everyone seems to get along beautifully.
Well, what I'd like to touch on a little bit with the chief here is that, and I don't think everybody knows this, is that you have a real national role in policing, in really international too.
That's
but
correct.
The town of Wakefield Police Department was ranked one of the top 10 in the world, which is unbelievable. But talk a little bit about your national role in the International Association of Chiefs of Police and what that and what you've brought back and what we've benefited from because of that. So I think that'll be fascinating for us to discuss.
Well, see, with the support of the town and Mr. Mayo, I had an opportunity, I was asked to throw my hat in the ring and run for an international position on the International Association of Chiefs of Police. Now, the IACP, as we call it, is in 30 countries around the world, and we have 130 countries around the world, and we have just about 27,000 members worldwide. So I ran for the election. It's a vice president at large position, and I won. And now I sit on the board of officers for the international. And what we do is we basically set policy and set the tone of policing. And we bring our membership in, and we talk to our members, and we listen to our members. But not only do we have a seat at the table in our own world, but globally, we meet with Interpol, we meet with Europol, we meet with, this year we had a chance to sit down with President Obama, and talk about the issues that are going on and get out in front of what's going on. So it's a pretty exciting time, and it's very exciting for me. It's a tremendous opportunity. The town does afford me the time to do what we have to do, and but being exposed to that, I think, gives me the opportunity to bring that stuff back to Wakefield and get out ahead of it. And it's also changed, when you participate in groups like that, you change your mindset.
Right.
This job, you burn out very quickly, so you have to have that, we try to bring that opportunity back to our offices to stay one step ahead of everybody else. So I'm on it. It's a great honor, and considering there's only 2 vice presidents in the world, and I'm one of them, I'm a pretty lucky guy. You know, so.
But also, you know, in this time, especially this year, we have seen a massive uptick in police violence, either against police or police against citizens, for whatever reason. So we're not going to go into the details of each individual thing, but it seems as though those communities that put an emphasis on community policing, as opposed to the more traditional law and order enforcement approach, for lack of a better term, seems to deal with these problems proactively, more effectively than we're seeing elsewhere in the country. Because it's almost like a daily occurrence in the news now of something somewhere happening.
Well, let me throw a few numbers out there so people understand exactly what's going on in policing today. And Steve and I have talked about this ad nauseum, the fact that there are 800,000 police officers, federal, state, tribal, college, municipal officers in this country. Go to work every day. They make 39,000 arrests every day, almost 12 million arrests a year in this country. And you hear about the one bad decision, or the one decision that was probably the correct decision, but you only see that 3-second snippet on TV. And that's what everybody is focusing on, plus the fact that the 24-hour news cycle.
Right.
They have to fill that void, and you see it over and over and over again. But yet, there's almost 800,000 police officers in this country that do a tremendous job every day. They go to work in the middle of the night, they go to work in the snow and the heat, and they do a great job, but you never hear about that. But it's communities like Wakefield that we're fortunate enough to have built on that community policing philosophy. Now, people talk about community policing, but and one of the tenets of and maybe we'll probably get into this in a little bit on the 21st century policing that came out of the White House, one of the tenets is building the relationship with the community. And if you don't have that, you can throw all kinds of money at it and it's not going to work. And what they did in Newark was exactly that. They started throwing money at it and it wasn't working. So then they went to Camden, New Jersey, and they threw resources, and the police got out. They broke the police department down, rebuilt it, and had everybody get out on the street, get out of their cruisers, talk to people. And Camden is one of the most unbelievable turnarounds in policing. So you take that, and Wakefield's nothing more than a microcosm of that.
Right.
So we do it every, we do it every day.
And you brought up President Obama, so let's talk a little bit about that. Back in the end of 2014, President Obama brought in his task force on 21st century policing. And we've talked a lot about that, you and I, over the years, and well, the last few years anyway. And that number one, building trust and legitimacy in the community. You see our officers out there. You see them at Wakefield Against Violence meetings. You see them in the Human Rights Commission. You see them in the schools. I mean, one thing I'm very proud of, and I think the chief is very proud of, is that we have a school resource officer in the 3 major schools in Wakefield, being the Galvin, the Wakefield High School, and the vocational school up the hill. That, to me, and now you have officers that are working day-to-day with the young people, and a rapport is established, there's trust established, and when you bring it back to President Obama's task force, that I know that the chief we're lucky that the chief was, on the inside of this whole thing. One of this was changing that, they're not the warrior versus the guardian, versus, we're mentors, and I think our police have become mentors to these young people, so they're a little off. They're going to see the police as their ally, not someone that they're going to throw a bottle at. That's a big difference, and that, that's here, and that's in, some of the communities around here too. But we're very lucky that it's here. And that, to me, that was the number one point. So you know what, and I think, the chief was right, gave the Board of Selectmen, town meeting, a lot of credit for this. They had to go and fund that. And a lot of communities don't.
Right.
I mean, the chief will tell you, this doesn't work, this is the old DARE program, it didn't work. Well, no. He took it, and his people took it a step further. And that's job one for us right now. And I think it's been a great partnership. I think all 3 schools will tell you that. And I don't know if you want to add on to that. I think that's exactly what's happened there.
I think that's a perfect example. And we've taken programs that weren't necessarily bad. They just needed to be re-engineered.
Exactly.
And we sat down, and as a group of people, we took commanders. We took, we have staff meetings. They're more of a vertical meeting because we want input from the players, the people that are out there doing that. We also talk to the school department. What do you need, and what do you need? What do you want? What can we provide? And as a result of that, we were able to re-engineer the programs and make them work. Was it tough going in the beginning? Oh, there were bumps.
There were bumps, yeah.
But we get over them, and now, as we go forward, I mean, our school resource officers, they take calls on Sunday mornings. Last year, there was a stabbing in a community on a Sunday morning, and our SRO was on the line to me because, we thought that could explode here on Monday morning. And not only did the SRO establish a relationship in that community, we established protocols here so that on the morning by Monday morning, we had talked to the superintendent in the schools and the school principals. So you have to do that. And sometimes you just have to get up and answer the phone in the morning, but it works, and we found that it works, and we build on that. So we're not inventing anything, we're re-engineering. So.
Well, but in a sense, too, the 3 of us are old enough to remember when community policing was the only way it could be done, when police walked a beat in downtown Wakefield or in Greenwood or North Avenue or wherever. They walked a beat. They didn't get in cars and just drive around. We're returning to that face to face. You know who the police are. You know
Right.
what they do. A lot of them are in the community. And that has been the vital, I think, change, getting police out of the car and in the community, that has made all the difference. Because now everybody, they don't just see some faceless,
Right.
person in a uniform driving by.
But there's an interesting timeline that goes with that. And in the 1970s, after Vietnam had settled down, or started to settle down, policing went to 2-officer cars, and they had the rapid response units. So we got through that bump, and then there was some community policing money that came out of the Clinton administration, and President Clinton was dumping a lot of money into getting us out of the cars. So we came out of the cars. Then 9/11 comes. We go back in the cars.
Yeah.
And the government is giving us all kinds of money to buy body armor and heavy equipment and long arms, and get back in the cars and hunker down. And like Steve said, that put us back in the Warrior.
Right.
And we found that failed miserably. So now we get the Ferguson effect kicks in. So now we're saying, let's go back and get back on the street and transition from the Warrior back into the Guardian role. And that's where the President Obama came through with Chief Ramsey and a few other sociologists and whatnot, with the 21st century policing model, which is nothing more than what we did in 1970, but it's been re-engineered. And
Or the
it's been-
60s, or the 50s, or the
That's right.
40s,
Well, I think,
yeah.
but I think with a little more training.
Well,
Emphasis on
that,
training.
I think,
Yeah.
is the big difference, is that the training is so much better and so much more comprehensive in preparing police officers to do the day-to-day that needs to be done, that just didn't exist 50, 60, 70, 80 years ago. That wasn't a part of it. The other thing, you know, there are competing discussions going on in the country between those police departments who go into the militarization mode with buying the surplus military gear and the body armor and, you know, just going whole hog on that, and the community, which we're doing here in Wakefield. The one isn't working. Problems are getting worse in those communities, not better. Hopefully they'll see that at some point.
Well, let's not completely dismiss the
The body.
warrior role,
Yeah.
because we do, that's gone into the background, but we're ready for that. Sometimes you have to fight, unfortunately. And sometimes you need that equipment. It's a sad world, but everyone has to wear body armor today. But I think what we've been able to do, and you know, Steve and I again have talked about this, is we've been able to put that in the background, keep that behind the curtain if we need it, but get out into the guardian role. And because historically what has happened in American policing is that society and the government has taken all the ills and thrown it at the feet of the police. We don't know how to handle this, so let's train the cops to do this. And that's not our job. All these things that are laid at the feet of the police, that's not our job, but we do it because we're asked to do it. Which brings us into the whole mental health thing. And we've been lucky enough in Wakefield to embrace the mental health piece, which is a huge problem in society. So they throw the mental health piece at the feet of the police and say, fix it. And so we do the best we can, but I think in Wakefield, we've been very fortunate with a project that started about 6 years ago.
6 years ago, yeah.
Yeah, and one of our the deputy chief, Jack McKay at the time, I got an edict from the selectmen, we have to clean this problem up, and I went to Deputy McKay and I said, Jack, we have to clean this up.
Yeah.
Well, that started with the panhandling problem downtown.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But that has morphed into a statewide recognized program of how do we deal with the mentally ill, and you know, what do we do with them? How do we dropped our arrests of people, of homeless, and people who were less fortunate than us by almost 80% because of, you know, the training, the crisis intervention training that a program that we built, that Deputy McKay built with Detective Silver, and then we moved on from there. So we're pretty lucky. But that's looking at it from the social perspective.
Right, but and I think what's an important point there is that you just said it. We dropped our arrests by 80%. And the chief said, we can't arrest our way out of this problem, Steve. And yet the problem has diminished greatly to where there is really a community that has some mental issues that are actually seeking the police out for help now instead of the other way around. Do we still have areas that flare up every now and then? We absolutely do. In fact, we recently had some things in the downtown that needed to be readdressed, and I give the chief a lot of credit. Let's get everybody in, let's get input again from the community, let's get their buy-in, what are you seeing? You know, work with us, see something, say something. I think that was what you came up with. And I think that shows where the department is going. And you juxtapose that mental health, you know, with also being ready for the other aspects. You know, I was fortunate enough to be invited, although they didn't give me a gun, and I'm still upset about that, an active shooter training.
Yeah.
That we did up, that the police department did up at the Volk. Absolutely fascinating to see what an officer or officers in a small town like Wakefield could go through in the world that we live in today. So you have that warrior training that has to happen to protect the officers and protect the community, plus this more of a social aspect here. And I think you wrap that all up into, you know, everybody hopped up with a cell phone that puts on a video when something isn't perfect in their eyes and maybe crops it and shows the worst part of that for everyone. And boy, how bad the police is. So that's kind of the world that you live in,
Right.
that they live in, and that we as a community that back the police live in. So to me, it's a fascinating dichotomy. Say, here we were doing training, have a social worker ride with the police department to kind of help, how do we handle these situations? You've got police going into domestic violence situations and know what's going to happen. Chief has put a mission-specific program together with having a domestic violence officer, I guess we call it, to handle that. And you juxtapose that against active shooter training, which to me was just a fascinating day to go, or an afternoon to go through. So I give you a lot of credit for balancing all of those things, and
Thank you.
the community's much better for it, and really the envy of those around.
So we're at this point now. Where do we go from here? What do you foresee as the path for policing? Is this the be-all or end-all, or is there something else that you and other chiefs are looking into toward the future?
Well, David, there's always room for improvement, and a lot of times the change is forced upon us by the culture of the world. And right now we have some serious issues. We talk about terrorism, and everybody says, well, that's a federal job. It's really not. It's on the local level. We'll always have domestic violence. Right now we're battling the scourge of opiates and drugs, which are ravaging our communities. Small, large, it doesn't matter. We have too many people are dying on the streets, and right here in Wakefield. So we're working on that, and that's where policing is going. But we always have to keep in mind that we want to focus on police legitimacy and keep our communities in context and keep that dialogue open, because we don't know what's around the corner. The last 18 months have been the worst 18 months in policing history, going back to the 1800s and what has happened. And we work collectively and cooperatively, not only with our colleagues and our peers, but our government agencies, our government that we work for, and the people we work for. So whatever they lay at our feet, we're going to take a run at, and we're going to try to solve the problems. We can solve the problems easier if we are able to discuss these problems openly long before and have some ideas. So, I always say, people have said to me, they've walked up to me a million times and they said, Chief, why would anyone want to get into law enforcement today? And my answer is, this is the best time to get into law enforcement, because you're going to make a difference. Get in and make a difference. And that goes back to the training. When I went through my recruit class, it was 12 weeks. That was a long time ago. It's 26 weeks now. It's 6 months in a recruit class. And we're developing post standards for our officers, so that our education is at a base level. And true, our officers get the Quinn Bill in Massachusetts, but we think they deserve it. And as a result of that higher ed level, we have less complaints, we have less internal affairs investigations, and we have built that trust within the community. People know that the officers they're well-trained, they're well-educated, and they're us, we're us. We live in a community too. We have children that go to school, we have pets, we have soccer games on Saturdays, and that's where we want to go.
With all of the ills that that are thrown at the feet of the police department, society's ills, this always bothered me, why wouldn't you want to have a well-educated, well-trained police force? It's not just, stick a badge and put a badge and stick a gun on, that's it.
No, with a badge to
we
go
want to
around and
have,
muscle people.
that they have a background in social work,
Yeah.
Psychology, which I think that we all should take a lot of psychology courses, really, to help us.
There's a lot of psychologists out there, too.
Out there that are telling us what to do. But how important is that you have an officer that's out there and is well-educated, well-trained to diffuse a situation, so they never have to use the weapon?
Right.
And that's really, I think, what we go for in a lot of these. The other thing is that Mary and the chief has told a story the other night at the selectmen's meeting, is how we have to train our officers to also be safe. And we had an incident the other night that somewhere in the training, in the back of that officer's mind, was him to be safe, or we could have had a very serious, horrible tragedy in Wakefield. In Wakefield, I want to say to the community, oh no, this is Wakefield, it's not going to happen here. No, in Wakefield. Somewhere in that training that he got at the academy, reinforced by you and your department, and is well educated in his past before the academy, that probably saved that officer's life and probably the life of a lot of other people around there. So, I mean, I'm very impressed with that. I guess we can't really go into the whole story, but that is what they're facing today. So it always bothered me. We want them to be very well educated. You know, and the other thing, and I'll give the way that we manage our government in Wakefield a lot better than years before, is that the people that are made police officer in Wakefield, they pass an exam, or they take an exam. They're also interviewed by the 3 lieutenants, okay? And then that list is brought to the chief, and they together decide, make the decision, this is who we should appoint, and it actually comes to me. And then I talk to the chief, and I would have to say, I was 100% of the time, 99.9, we've gone with your recommendation, because the proof is in the pudding. There isn't that, you know, listen, I got Johnny's nephew over here, you got to give him a job. That did happen all over the place years ago.
Probably still does
And
in
it
some
probably,
places.
but I'm telling
Yeah.
you, but you pay for that down the road.
Sure.
And you pay for that with someone who's ill-informed, and gets your whole community into trouble. And not only that, but gives the police department a stigma. That's not there. Certainly not there in Wakefield. So really, kudos to you and your staff for
Thank you, Mr.
putting the finest foot forward for our community. And I think the community in Wakefield pretty much embraces it. And why don't you say that, you know, all the stuff going around, you know, but the community's been pretty good coming to the police station and
Right.
just, you know, why don't you share some of that with the viewers? They may not know that.
Well, you know, and to follow that up about the education.
Yeah.
And people coming to the station. And, you know, when we went through, when the Dallas police officers were murdered last month, and then the 3 that were murdered in Louisiana, our station was overwhelmed with cookies, like we need cookies, right? But with cookies and all kinds of flowers and gifts and things, not gifts, but, you know, edibles. And,
Went against our whole wellness program.
which, and
But
it was
just a
so
sign
moving.
of how people
Right.
appreciate
Exactly.
this police department in Wakefield.
And we were honored, and every person was, got a handwritten note thanking them that brought stuff
That's
into our
really
station.
nice, yeah.
But that brings me to one last thing before, you know, we talk about the 21st century policing. The last last tenet is the sixth pillar, as they call it, and it talks about officer safety and wellness.
Wellness, yeah.
And one of the big things that we've done, and we've done it through the collective bargaining
Yeah.
process, was to instill officer wellness. They have a fit test that they can participate in. Our officers stay healthy. They eat healthy. They, at the end of their shift, they go home to their families. It's a whole different world than
Right.
when I was a patrol officer. But I will tell you this, one of the biggest issues that we worry about, because of what we see on the job, is suicide. And it's one of the biggest issues right now in policing. And we're working on it, and we work with it, and it's a whole package that, that we try to bring together. And by having, Steve just mentioned it, we hire people, we hire them for 30 years.
Right.
That's a lifetime. So we want to keep them fit, we want to keep them healthy. That means their head is screwed on straight, and hopefully it's going to work for the benefit of the town and the other officers they work with each and every day. So it's a challenge.
It is,
It's a
and I
challenge.
tell you, I've seen some of the interviews I wouldn't want to take that interview when these kids are coming in. They've got to be
Right.
on the ball in all facets.
But
to
we see
be a
that in the
Wakefield police
quality
officer.
of the new officers coming in. We
Absolutely.
see that in the quality of the command staff,
Yeah, absolutely.
you know, which there were years we couldn't say that. Now we can.
Yeah, we're very, very, very lucky and fortunate, and, you know, I talk to a lot of other managers out there and town managers, and if they have an issue, you know, with their police, they have it's a big community issue. There's a problem. We don't have that in Wakefield at all, just the opposite. So that's really good, and with everything going on in the world and the country, we're very lucky to have Chief Smith and our men and women in blue.
Oh, thank you, Mr. Mayor.
And thank you for coming on the program.
Oh, my pleasure, my pleasure. It's you know, it's nice to let people share. We love to share. You know, we love to, I think bringing people inside what we do is very important. And whether it's government, whether it's policing or fire service or whatever it is, it's nice to bring them in. So it's my pleasure, and I'm honored I had the opportunity to be here tonight.
Thank you. Steve? We'll
Great-
see you
great
next
night.
month. We've run out of time as usual, but for good stuff.
Yep.
Thank you for joining us. we'll see you next month as well.